Hey everyone! Today we're diving into the amazing story of the Alans, a group of nomads who played a surprising role in history. The Alans were an ancient Iranian people who lived by moving around and herding animals. They started out in Central Asia and eventually made their way to the North Caucasus. Some even traveled farther west into Europe and North Africa, leaving their mark along the way. The Alans were part of a larger group called the Sarmatians, and they might have been related to another nomadic tribe from Central Asia called the Masajde. Historians think the Alans were the same group mentioned in Old Chinese and Roman writings. In Chinese records, they were called the Yankai, and in Roman accounts they were known as the Aorsi. By the 1st century CE, Roman writers were talking about the Alans as they settled near the Black Sea. From there, they started raiding nearby empires, like the Parthians and the Romans in the South Caucasus. These raids made the Alans a powerful group in the region. Things got tough for the Alans between 215 and 250 CE, when the Goths took over their homeland, the Pontic steppe. But this wasn't the end of their story. Around 375 CE, the Huns defeated the Goths, and the Alans joined a massive migration into Europe. In 406 CE, some Alans crossed the Rhine River with two other groups, the Vandals and the Suebi. They eventually settled in places like Orléans and Valence, in modern-day France. Others traveled with the Vandals to Spain and later to North Africa, where they became part of a kingdom that lasted until 534 CE, when the Byzantine Empire took over. Not all Alans left their original lands, though. By the 9th century, some of them had created the kingdom of Alania, in the North Caucasus. This kingdom lasted until the Mongol invasions in the 13th century. Today, many scholars think the modern Ossetians, who live in the Caucasus, are the direct descendants of the Alans. They've kept their Eastern Iranian language and many parts of their culture. The Alans' language came from a mix of Scytho-Sarmatian languages and eventually developed into Ossetian. Their name, Alan, probably comes from an old Iranian word related to Aryan, showing their connection to other Indo-Iranian peoples. Versions of their name appear in ancient writings in many languages, like Greek, Chinese, and Latin, which shows how widely they were known. And over time, however, they faced growing challenges from neighboring groups like the Bulgars, Gokturks, and Khazars. These conflicts forced many Alans to move from the plains into the more secure mountain regions. In the early 900s, the Alans began adopting Byzantine orthodoxy, influenced by the powerful Byzantine Empire. This change happened during the time of Patriarch Nicholas Mystikos. While it's said that the Alans briefly abandoned Christianity around 932, they soon returned to the faith. By the 1200s, they were firmly established as Christians following the Byzantine tradition. Today's Ossetians, who live in the Caucasus, are thought to be the descendants of the Alans. Their name likely comes from Ais, a term linked to the ancient Aorsi. Historical texts like the Armenian geography refer to Western Alans as Ashtagor, which survives as Dagor, representing a Western group of Ossetians. In the Ossetian language, Ossi refers to the Mount Elbrus region, where the Alans are believed to have lived. Not all Alans stayed in the Caucasus. Some came under the control of the Huns, while others spread out across the steppes. By the 800s and 900s, they began forming alliances that eventually led to the Christian kingdom of Alania. This kingdom thrived for a few centuries but fell to the Mongols in the 1200s. Many Alans were then drawn into the Mongol Empire's military campaigns, participating in battles across Europe and Asia, including the Battle of Kulikovo under Mamai of the Golden Horde. By the 1200s, Alans were scattered across Eurasia. The Franciscan friar William of Rubruck wrote about seeing Alans in Central Asia, and Marco Polo described their role as royal guards in the Yuan dynasty's court in Beijing. Known as the Osud, these guards were influential and even converted to Roman Catholic Christianity under missionaries like John of Montecorvino. This shows how adaptable the Alans were, blending into various cultures and societies. Some Alans resisted Mongol domination, A missionary named Giovanni da Pian del Carpine wrote about a group of Alans who held off a Mongol siege on a mountain for 12 years. While this story isn't confirmed by other sources, archaeologists have found weapons from the 1200s near the site, suggesting some truth to the tale. The Mongols used divide-and-conquer tactics to weaken the Alans and their allies. First, they convinced the Cumans to abandon their alliance with the Alans. Then, they attacked both groups. Despite these challenges, some Alans joined the Mongol forces, forming a unit called the Right Alan Guard. These soldiers were stationed in important places like Karakorum, the Mongol capital. The Alans also influenced Eastern Europe. They merged with other groups, contributing to the formation of populations like the Volga Tatars. Some Alans founded settlements, such as Yachi in modern-day Romania, which later became the capital of Moldavia. Today, the legacy of the Alans lives on in the Ossetian people. Their language, Ossetian, is one of the last surviving northeastern Iranian languages. It has two main dialects, Digor, spoken in the west, and Iron, spoken elsewhere. A third dialect, Jassic, was once spoken in Hungary. The national poet, Kosta Katagurov, helped shape modern Ossetian literature, using the Iron dialect as its foundation. The Alans' history is one of strength and adaptability. Despite facing numerous challenges, they managed to preserve their identity and culture through centuries of change and upheaval. And Alans were known for their striking physical appearance, as described by the Roman historian Ammianus Marcellinus. He noted that most Alans were tall and well-built, with impressive physical beauty. Their hair had a yellowish tint, and their eyes held a fierce, almost intimidating quality. These descriptions painted a vivid picture of a people who were as imposing in appearance as they were in their reputation as warriors. The language spoken by the Alans belonged to the Eastern Iranian family, closely tied to other ancient Eastern Iranian languages. This connection is evident when comparing certain words, like the word for, horse, across Indo-Iranian languages, which provides insight into their linguistic roots. This ancient tongue, although no longer spoken, left traces that have helped linguists reconstruct elements of their culture and communication. Before their conversion to Christianity, the Alans were polytheists, worshipping multiple gods. Their religious practices were influenced by the Scythians, another prominent group in the region. Rituals were elaborate, often focusing on their chief deity, whose identity remains somewhat mysterious. Some scholars speculate that their beliefs were a form of Zoroastrianism blended with local traditions, but much about their spiritual life before Christianity is still open to interpretation. Christianity began to influence the Alans in the 4th and 5th centuries, introduced by Byzantine missionaries who followed the Arian tradition. This early Christianization marked a significant shift in their religious practices. However, history took a tumultuous turn when the Mongol invasions of the 13th century forced many Eastern Alans to retreat into the Caucasus. These invasions disrupted their society and pushed them into closer contact with native Caucasian groups, leading to further cultural and social transformations. In the late 14th century, the devastation continued when Timur's armies swept through the northern Caucasus, targeting the Alans. This invasion resulted in a tragic loss of life, decimating their population and forcing survivors to adapt to new realities. Over time, the western region of Digor came under the influence of the Kabardians, an East Circassian tribe. This brought Islam into the area during the 17th century, adding another layer to the region's complex religious history.